Due to zoning restrictions, the devotees were not allowed to use the Berkeley Temple as a residence, but since no suitable rooms were immediately available, which is where our deities are from, isn't it? From the Berkeley Temple in San Francisco.
San Francisco, Berkeley is different than San Francisco.
Oh, it's a different one.
They did merge after the devotees. That's why they merged where the devotees, the deities.
The devotees decided to accommodate Srila Prabhupada and his personal staff in the temple for the few days of his visit, hoping the authorities wouldn't find out. But on the first night, at 2 a.m., the police came by to check. Srila Prabhupada was already up, working on his Bhagavatam translation, when the police knocked loudly on the outside door near his room. Young Mike, who was to receive initiation in a few days, had been posted as guard. He opened the door, and 3 flashlights shone into his face. The officers entered and showed their credentials. "You're not supposed to be sleeping in here," one of them said, roughly. "I wasn't," said Mike. "Come on, we saw you in your sleeping bag." "No," Mike protested. "I was just lying there because I'm God and my spiritual master." Srila Prabhupada could easily hear the disturbance just outside his room. Other devotees who were spending the night in the building with Prabhupada came out of their rooms and tried reasoning with the officers about the special occasion of the spiritual master's visit. One of the policemen began roaming around, checking in corners with his flashlight, opening doors. Now all the devotees in the building, about half a dozen, were standing in the outside. Where's the old man? One of the policemen asked. Bahulashva, the temple president, requested them not to disturb Srila Prabhupada, but the policemen made no attempt at politeness. They were, in fact, overtly nasty. One policeman banged on the window to Prabhupada's room. Don't disturb him, Bahulashva requested. He's a very elderly man. He's not sleeping. These are the hours in which he writes, and all these men are his personal entourage. They're staying here to help him. We're not violating the rules. Suddenly, one of the policemen opened Prabhupada's door and shone his light in on Prabhupada's face. All three policemen peered in, while Srila Prabhupada looked up at them, concerned yet detached. The policeman shone his flashlight into the corners of Prabhupada's simple, dimly lit room. No one said anything, and after about 10 seconds, they shut the door. The police officers and the devotees continued arguing, the devotees contending they were not using the building as a residence, the police citing infractions and taking down notes, warning that they would be back. They finally left. The incident had constituted about a half-hour interruption of Prabhupada's work, but as the building became quiet again, Prabhupada continued translating the verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam and skipping the paragraphs into the dictating machine. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is Canto 5, Chapter 6, which is entitled The Activities of Lord Rishabhdev. And we're on to text 7 and 8. Okay. So I'll just run through the Sanskrit. Tasyaha va evan mukta lingashya bhagavata rishabhasya yogamaya vasanaya deha iman jagatam abhimana basena sankramamana kanka venka kutakam dakshina karnatakam deshan radrichya gopakata kutaka chalopavana asya kritamasa kevala unmada eva mukta mudajo sambita eva vichara. So I'll just read the translation and go into text 8. Actually, Lord Rishabhdev had no material body, but due to Yoga Maya, he considered his body material. And therefore, because he played like an ordinary human being, he gave up the mentality of identifying with it. Following this principle, he began to wander all over the world. While traveling, he came to the province of Karnataka in South India and passed through Konka, Venka, and Kutaka. He had no plan to travel this way, but he arrived near Kutakachala and entered a forest there. He placed stones within his mouth and began to wander through the forest, naked and with his hair disheveled like a madman. So I'll run through the Sanskrit for text 8. Ata samira vega viduta veno vikashana jatogra davanala stad vanam aleli kanhana sahatena dadaha. So if everyone responds, please. Ata, thereafter. Samira vega, by the force of the wind. Viduta, tossed about. Venu, of bamboos. Vikashana, by the rubbing. Jata, produced. Ugra, fierce. Dava anala, a forest fire. Tat, that. Vanam, forest near Kutakachala. Alelihana, devouring all around. Saha, with. Tena, that body. Dadaha, burned to ashes. Translation. While he was wandering about, a wild forest fire began. This fire was caused by the friction of bamboos, which were being blown by the wind. In that fire, the entire forest near Kutakachala and the body of Lord Rishabdev were burnt to ashes. Responsibly, please. While he was wandering about, a wild forest fire began. This fire was caused by the friction of bamboos, which were being blown by the wind. In that fire, the entire forest near Kutakachala and the body of Lord Rishabdev were burnt to ashes. Prabhupada ki jai. Such a forest fire can burn the external bodies of animals, but Lord Rishabdev was not burned, although he apparently seemed so. Lord Rishabdev is the supersoul of all living entities within the forest, and his soul is never burned by fire. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Adagyo Yam, the soul is never burned by fire. Due to Lord Rishabdev's presence, all the animals in the forest were also liberated from material engagement. Om Agyanatamaranda Shagananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Malitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchikalpatrubhischa Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Paritanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So Srila Prabhupada in the Pepper is saying that the body can be burnt, but the super soul is not burnt. And Lord Rishabdev was actually the super soul of all living entities within the forest. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it mentions that, that the soul is not burned by fire. It also mentions that the soul is not moistened by water. It's not withered by the wind, and it can't be cut to pieces by any weapon. So any material element, earth, water, fire, air, ether, nothing can touch the soul. That's why Jiva Goswami, actually, he said that worse than piercing somebody with a lance is piercing somebody with sharp words, because the lance can only pierce the 5 material elements, but the sharp words can pierce the subtle elements, the mind, intelligence, and ego, and they can harm the person much more than just attacking them with a lance. So very interesting, isn't it? So the soul can't be cut to pieces by any weapon. And I was just reading the 16th chapter the other day. Arjuna is saying he's asking Krishna, what is the divine and demoniac? So Krishna says to him, don't worry, Arjuna, you're born of divine qualities, because Arjuna is worried that I'm going to now kill a lot of people, maybe millions of people. And before I do, am I not being demoniac by going ahead and doing that? So Krishna is assuring Arjuna that the soul can't be cut to pieces by any weapon, and that if he doesn't act, there will be a reaction. But if he does act, there won't be a reaction. So that's the intricacies of action and inaction. Anyway, so the soul can't be cut to pieces by any weapon, burned by fire, moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. So we were in Mayapur. First time I went to Mayapur, which was probably in 1990. And there was a burning ghat at the Ganges, and they had the body of this old person on the like pyre, and then they burn it, and then the body becomes consumed by fire. And first of all, you'd think, well, that's quite barbaric. Can they not do it in a more kind of polished way, out of sight, and we can just pay our respects, and they'll be more respectful to the deceased, and it'll help us to overcome our grief. But it's interesting, actually, as the body's being consumed by the flames, it becomes more and more apparent that the person that you loved and treasured is not what is there before you. breaking down in the flames of the fire. And it's actually very consoling to think that that person that I treasured the association of is now somewhere else, and he was never the body in the first place, and the body was actually always dead, and was never living. It only appeared. Srila Prabhupada refers to the body as flapping. It's flapping. The body is a flapping, so it's flapping about. And you could think, if you saw a flag flapping in the wind, you could think that the flag is very lively. That's a very lively flag you've got there. It's flapping away like anything. As soon as the wind dies down, flap. No more flapping. Oh, the flag's died. Is the flag sad today? He's not doing a lot of flapping today. Did somebody upset the flag? No, the flag was always hanging down, flopping down. But because there was a gust of wind, then the flag looked like it was alive. So the body is a flapping flag made of flesh and blood, and it has some form. Although the form starts to leave the body. I don't know if you've ever watched how the body goes as you go on in life. It starts to lose its symmetry. Things start to go in unusual, takes on unusual dimensions. When the body is young, it looks very symmetrical and nicely formed, and then as time goes on, it loses its form. As the body loses its form, then the illusion of the person being the body starts to wear a little bit thin, That's why people are very concerned with keeping their bodies nice and slim so that they can really, what do they call it? Live the dream. I'm going to live this dream. I'm thinking I'm the body, and I'm really going to play the part of being the body. And so the flapping body we identify with, then the flapping body stops flapping, and then everyone becomes sad. So these Vedic rituals were there because they were educational. Everything in Vedic culture was to give people knowledge, to elevate their consciousness and bring them to a higher awareness, a higher understanding. So to become more aware that that person is not the body that I see burning in the flames, then that also means that I'm not the body. It also means the birds and the bees and the beasts and the flowers and the trees, none of them are the body. It's the same principle for everybody. And that's described in the Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Panditaha samadarshana, sama darshana. Sama is all, darshana sees. Pandita, one who is learned, he sees everybody equally. He doesn't look at the body. He sees the soul. And that's why he doesn't want to harm anything or kill anything, because everything has as much right to live as he does, every living entity. And he tries to subsist on foodstuffs which will cause the least amount of violence to the environment. That's why in the ideal Vedic culture, the cow was protected and worshipped. Somebody just put a nice video on of a boy playing a flute. Have you seen it? All the cows come over. They all come over. It's amazing. He's in Mayapur, I think. He's playing the flute, and all the cows, they're coming up. It's like a big circle of them, and they're all looking at the flute and then touching him, with their nose. He's pushing them away so he can play the flute. And they all come over. So this is this is real. I mean, you wouldn't think, well, let's go and feed the cows. You think, come feed the cows. I want to go and fly my XYZ super turbocharged thermoconductor extrapolator turbo. I'm going to have some real fun, People are thinking they can have fun with their technology. And then we go full circle. We try the technology and it's all rubbish. And then we go, okay, let's go and see the cows. And it's actually really nice, If you have a pet, it's of some solace to have just a pure exchange with something that's not it's not got an angle. It's just as it is, They say that if you're doing a drama, don't put animals or children on stage, because everybody will look at them, because they're the only thing on stage that's real. Everyone else is pretending, So they're animals. There's no pretension that they are what they are. When Dinabandhu came, he was saying the cow gives off an aura of 30 meters. So you could just imagine if you were living in the Vedic system and you've got 100 cows in the village, that's a lot of well-being going out, people don't know why, but they just feel okay about everything. And when people lose connection with the natural world, and they lose connection also with how to live naturally, because when you disconnect from the natural world, then your way of life becomes disconnected as well. And the way you eat, sleep, and behave isn't natural anymore. Everything becomes unnatural, synthetic. And there's never a case, no example anywhere in the history of mankind where a synthetic replication was better than the thing it replicated. It's like now we have plastic plates. So that's a synthetic replication of what they used to have, according to the Vedic culture, thousands and thousands of years ago, which was a gold plate or a silver plate, or at least a copper plate to eat off, because it has all kinds of antiseptic qualities and it's helpful in it. So we've thrown those plates away, and here we have the new version, the updated version. It's a plastic plate, it's carcinogenic, it's non-biodegradable, but we've got trillions of them. So let's put a big hand together for modern technology and progress of mankind, the progress of a person going backwards. Now it's less healthy, it's less aesthetic, and it has no value. So how is that progress? Everyone has been made a pauper. They've traded in jewelry and gold plates for plastic. And they're trying to pretend that this is good. They call it bling, don't they? When something is blingy, it's like big, gaudy, it's all showy. Look at me. But it's all plastic, it's all false. So, in real society, real culture, then this awareness of what we actually are and what is illusion and what is real happiness and what is an actually natural way of life, that's inherently there automatically. For us, we're trying to take up this Krishna consciousness now, this lifestyle, this culture. And so for us, it's a little difficult because we haven't been used to this. So some of the things that we're doing are counterintuitive. Being humble is counterintuitive to Western society's training, which is I'm the man, I'm the center of attention, I'm the best, and everybody is lower than me. I was listening to Guru Govinda Maharaj yesterday. He was giving this talk about humility, and he was saying, if there is 1, 2, 3, the person at the top, the second person, the third person, he said, then humility is that I'm at the bottom. Everyone else is a Vaishnav, but I'm not a Vaishnav. I don't consider myself a Vaishnav. So he said, this is actually what a real Vaishnav is like. He considers himself the lowest, lower than everybody else, at the bottom of the pile, And it's interesting, isn't it, when Srila Prabhupada was having that conversation with the Japanese printing company Dynapon, one of these young, enthusiastic salespersons was there, and he said to him, what is the goal of life? And the boy took all their cards and then put his card on the top. And ours is the opposite. Ours is exactly the opposite. That we get everybody's cards, all their business cards, and we put our card on the bottom. So that's counter. So anyway, we've been training in a certain way that if you're humble and respectful, then people will just walk all over you. So you have to stand your ground. You have to fight for your piece of turf. You have to give back what you get. As good as they give, you give it back. I remember getting told that when I was a kid. If you get into a fight, son, give as good as you get. So, are there any questions or comments? Yeah.
It's about the cows and their aura. And there is, I think I mentioned this before, this interesting fact that the being that comes being around the dogs has been understood for a long time, and people love dogs. But there is now more and more people are going to see the cows.
Are they?
Becoming big thing in the USA.
Wow.
Because some research has came out as well that being around the cows is the best of all animals.
Yeah.
In that it is far superior than dogs in general. Yeah. Like a cow is the best because a lot of people suffer nowadays from the mental health problems, so they go to see the cows.
Wow.
So it's become a big thing. Go to see the cows, hug them, and interact with them, and people just start grooming.
Yeah. So it's a therapy.
Yeah, it's a therapy. Yeah, counter.
And do they have factual evidence that's recorded on the research.
There. So, and of course, the horrible thing, after all this, then they get slaughtered. But, hopefully that kind of understanding as it spreads more and more, then people start thinking, wait a minute, they're giving us so much well-being, puts me into shape, and then I slaughter them.
So that's it, isn't it? That will solve all the problems, as if we can just, like Prabhupada Prana was saying, he'd like to see a book coming out by Vyasakya's wife, and it's about the harm that we're doing to the environment and the benefits of protecting the cows and leading a life more in accordance with them, in harmony with them, actually. And it's interesting in that book, Laws for a Happy Life, Dr. Torsenov there, he's an initiated devotee. He's referring to living according to the laws of the sun. Rise when the sun rises, go to bed when the sun sets, eat your biggest meal when the sun is at its highest. It's when your fire digestion is at its strongest. So if you're completely out of sync with what's going on in the natural world, and the cow is part of the natural world, and it's a very, very useful, very valuable animal. And so it's a therapy to come in contact with nature. I mean, you can hug a tree and that's nice, but you don't get a lot back from a tree. You don't see trees mooing, do you, or giving you milk? Well, I suppose they give you sap. But the reciprocation between the animals that are more evolved is more rewarding. If you have a pet spider, you're not going to get a lot of back from that. But the cow is very evolved. It's the just before the human form of life is the cow, according to Vedic evolution of consciousness. So it's a very elevated form of life, and of course, it's also very dear to Krishna. So, if you keep the cows happy, then you're keeping Krishna happy, and then you'll feel very happy if Krishna's happy. Although you may not be able to put your finger on it. That's the funny thing about happiness. It's a very evasive entity, happiness. It's not something you can acquire by numerical value. I'll get this amount of cars, I'll get this amount of money, I'll have this amount of girlfriends, I'll do this amount of intoxication, and then I'll achieve happiness. It's not the case. We have to rethink the whole happiness problem. And unhappiness as well. Oh, I'm unhappy because that's what advertising is telling you. Hey, by the way, you're unhappy because you don't have this. That's why you're unhappy. So they already work upon the assumption that people are unhappy. If people were leading Vedic lives with the cows and having a nice quality life, and then the poster says, you're unhappy, therefore you need this, then you could say, well, actually, I'm fine. Thank you very much. You can keep that. Put it in your pipe and smoke it. I'm fine.
It says cow cuddling is the newest global wellness trend.
Wow. Did everyone get the scientific term now? Cow cuddling.
Yes. So
you could be a cow cuddler?
Certified cow cuddler.
Cow cuddleization.
Yes.
Yeah, you're showing love, you're showing affection. So obviously, if you're giving out love and affection, and then the cow is evolved enough to appreciate that you are doing that and will reciprocate,
At the beginning of the class, you were saying about if someone hurts their body, then it can heal up to some degree. But if they fire some sharp words at us, that can hurt more.
Yeah.
I was saying that it says sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And I think that was maybe a brave attempt at someone trying to express that they're not hurt, but they really are, because I never found that to be true.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, we have different ways of dealing with that. If someone insults us, or neglects us, or says something harsh.
Yeah.
So how to deal with it in such a way that we don't become self-righteous or cold, because then it is harming us in the long term.
Funnily enough, I was just reading about this subject yesterday, and there's a Tibetan word called Tonglen, Tonglen. And Tonglen means to take in and then to give out. And with Tonglen, you take in the suffering and you breathe out healing energy. So the person may say something to you in a very angry, frowning, nasty way. You take that in, and then you breathe out, and you understand that there's a feeling behind that. He's behaving like that because he's hurt. They say hurt people hurt people. And when people feel the need to blame, it's because they're hurting. And they say blame is like an aspirin, because when you take the aspirin, it takes the pain away of being hurt. When you can blame somebody, you see. So the people take the aspirins to do that. So that's a very dysfunctional way of dealing with somebody else's negativity. It takes a certain amount of integrity to be able to brush aside someone's harsh words and to see that and to have sympathy for the person. But if you can do that, if you can show compassion to the person, it will detoxify the exchange. Instead of more anger and resentment being stimulated in you, you're able to deflect it and instead bring out a healing energy, an energy which is positive. And the person will be quite taken aback that you're behaving like that toward them. The person's been really, really nasty. And then you say, I'm sorry, and then you can think, what is, it's like there was a man on a train and all the children were playing around and they were really wild, and the man was upset because that was his time only to read on his way back from work, and he told the man, the father of the children, could you get these little brats to shut up, please? And then the man says, well, actually, I'm really sorry, but the mother's just died, and I'm really, really finding it difficult to cope with the whole thing, So his whole reaction to the situation changed. It became one of compassion, and then he was able to very easily tolerate and fully consider so nothing really changed apart from the way he received, he picked up the same situation. So maybe it's not always possible to do that, but you could see that if you became very accomplished at taking the other person's situation into account, then you'd be less inclined to react in a way which was resentful or negative. And actually, the funny thing about it is, she got a time life which she keep that. She tells him that Maharaj keep that. She get her a puja. She doesn't get it. The funny thing about it is, you'd think, well, I guess I'm doing that guy a favor by being nice to him. He's been horrible to me, but I'm going to be nice back to him, so I'm doing him a favor by, he doesn't really deserve this, but I'm going to. But actually, you're doing yourself a favor by doing it, because you're not allowed, those words don't pierce and affect you, because you're able to take out the sting and turn the situation into a positive situation instead. Like there was one man, he was begging, and he had one of those little cloths, and he was going on the doors. And this lady, she said, oh, it's one of those beggars at the door, and I'll get rid of him. And she went to the fireplace and she got a shovel full of soot, and she opened the door and she threw the soot all over his little cloth. And he said, there you go. And he said, oh, thank you very much. And she said, why are you thanking me? And he said, well, at least you gave something. Of course, it's all very well on paper, isn't it? But it's how to actually implement.
Yeah, the thing is, you might not actually know it's because of someone else's speaking. When you say hurt people. So you may not know it's because of that. And if you just assume it's something, then you can get it wrong just to see it seems to get it right, more likely to get it wrong. So if they've been in a big discussion of trying to ascertain what is eating at the person, then so how do you kind of deflect that kind of pain that someone may cause? And it might not be necessarily you it's intended for, it's just that's the way they deal, because it's a type of survival thing for them as well. So just a kind of a general thing, because you may not know the specifics of what's making someone tick like that. So how would we deal with that? just in general?
Yeah, well, for ourselves, if we're doing emotional kung fu, then for ourselves, whatever it is, we don't want to get affected in a way just going to bring out some bad state of mind in us. If we feel ourselves being justified by being resentful or bitter or bearing hate or wishing the person harm, then whatever it is, we've not processed it properly because we've ended up with the wrong result. Whatever the ultimate result is always to have good intention for the person and to have affection and respect for the person, however they behave. So whatever it is, we somehow find a way of deflecting it, and we're still able to proactively be kind toward the person. In fact, Mahatma was saying you can sum up all marriage counselling by just two simple words: be nice. So we kind of know, well, that's common sense, and we all know it's supposed to be nice, but it's not always possible to do those.
So the underlying motivation is to be nice, regardless of what comes.
Yeah. And you may think, well, that's not fair. You're being nice, and he's just, smashed your car, or he's just run off with your wife, or he's done something really bad, and you're being nice. You shouldn't do that. But you actually are the worse off for getting into a whole scenario with the person. It's like when they do the forgiveness clause, the first thing that Mahaprabhu asks everyone, and everyone says yes 99.9% of the time, is, do you believe in karma? And they say, he says, so why are you here then? For a forgiveness course. Because you're just getting what you're due. Via that person, via this person, there's nothing to forgive. In fact, it's yourself. You should be forgiving for getting yourself in the situation in the first place. But of course, it's not easy to just apply that. So then you have to have systems in place to kind of deal with you. What we see with Lord Vishwadeva, they were being very rude with him and very nasty with him, and he was oblivious. He wasn't getting into a fight with them and throwing stones back and doing the same thing that they were doing to him. He was just like, he just totally. And then he realized that if he behaved like an eccentric person, then people would leave him alone. So that was his way of dealing with it.
Is that it's saying that if you protect Dharma, then Dharma will protect you. So if we try and attempt to react, make that endeavor to react in the proper way, then Krishna is pleased, and by that he gives us knowledge of a high realization of deep understanding of the situation, how it's leading on to something. He's trying to teach us something, and he may give us the same thing, the face of the same thing again and again and again, because he's just waiting for us to really take on board. I'm trying to teach you something. It's out of his head trying to take away something, so to leave your hands empty so you can accept something, or something he's trying to give.
Yeah, so that's why we have to be patient, because sometimes it takes us, we have to be patient with ourselves, because sometimes it takes us a long time for the penny to drop. When you first come and you read the books, you think, right, okay, I'll do that, you do that. But you don't actually really do it, you just kind of intellectually accept that that's a good thing to do. And you think, because I've intellectually accepted that, therefore I must be a humble person, I must be a really kind person, I must be a really pure person, because I've just read that and I'm totally in agreement with it. But you're not. You've just accepted that is what you should be like, and now you're going to get a chance to try and apply it. Hare Krishna.
I've been hearing from Avadanya Dharma Das. He's a very popular Russian devotee, and he talks a lot about relationships and marriages. And he recommends that there are situations sometimes in marriages where you have to be strict. So, for example, where if one person betrays the other, does something really horrible, then you can't be nice, he says, because actually in the long term this is not good for their spiritual development either, because they are going to learn that this is okay. So in some situations you have to kind of create some kind of a punishment, either by creating distance between yourself and the person, just being strict with them and not opening so much your heart to them. And yeah, like you said, you gave an example, and it's okay to become eccentric, but not, I think, not in a marriage situation, because that's not going to help. You have to somehow continue communication. So I think, like, if you can provide an example, maybe from the Shastra as well, where there is that kind of punishment in a marriage situation is used.
Well, the first, be nice, just to qualify, be nice, because Krishna is asking Arjuna to be nice on behalf of the Kurukshetra. He's saying, he's asking him to be nice, but it's just how you qualify what being nice is. Because sometimes to be kind, you have to be cruel. Be cruel to be kind. You have to do that. You say with a child, for instance, if you smack that child, they say nothing means anything until you turn up. So when you turn up, you see the child being smacked, and you go to the mother and say, you shouldn't have done that. But if you were there a little bit earlier, you would have seen the child was about to turn in front of a car, and the mother managed to grab the child, and she was so frightened that the child was going to do this again, that she slapped the child. So the child would know once and for all, you will never do that again. So she was being nice to the child. But if you turned up later on and you thought, well, that woman is so horrible, she just slaps her children around like anything, then you'd think you would think she was being nice. So you have to really qualify what being nice is, Not that we're going around slapping everybody and say, well, I'm just being nice, I'm getting claps today. But you have to take into account the context of what it was that was going to be needed to help that person be beneficial. Like going back to Siddhanta, he had this person who was being rude to him all the time, really horrible and rude in classes. He was disturbing the whole classes. And when the person died, they all thought that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would be very happy. And he was crying. He said, "Oh, my best friend has just died," because he felt it was helping him to be humble, and it was bringing out his qualities of humility, because he had to tolerate it. So he saw him as his best friend.
There's also a message of one quote that Jagannath Priya found in the 11th canto, that if someone's envious of you, then it's your duty to neglect them. So if someone is actually causing you harm, then I think as Shenny was saying, then it's encouraging them if you allow them to continue to do it. So you have to distance yourself somehow. Whether that be distance yourself verbally, physically, or whatever, then that's another matter. How you do that. And it's also, you have a right to tell people, no, this is not acceptable. So this is another way of distancing. We don't have to accept everything and be a doormat.
Lay down parameters, isn't it? They say there's 3 things you can be in a relationship: aggressive, passive, and assertive. So if you're passive, it means you matter, I don't. If you're aggressive, it means I matter, you don't. And if you're assertive, it means you matter, as do I. And this is the line. This is the line. Don't step over the line. If you step over the line, then there'll be problems. So you lay the line down and you say, that's being assertive. At the same time, you're being respectful of the other person. Whereas if you're just passive, we have this idea that we think being humble and being nice means that I just grovel around on the floor all the time, and people can just wipe their feet on me if they need to, But that's not what humility means, actually. I mean, Arjuna was humble, but if you're on the other side, you wouldn't have maybe thought he was,
There's many examples where perhaps I would draw the line, and sometimes you would draw it very sweetly, and sometimes you'd be more forceful, and other times you'd be very forceful. If someone was repeatedly pushing an instance or doing something which was quite off track, then sometimes you have to come down in a certain way. But I guess the thing is, you try to do it nicely first of all.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work, then you have to assert it a bit more.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful that the assertion doesn't become an aggression thing.
Yeah.
Because it can go from you matter now, so matter to just also then become the person that we're trying to avoid.
Yeah. It's interesting, Anga has its different stages, and I was reading about the how it can break down, is that when a person becomes angry, if he's healthy when he expresses it, he expresses his vulnerability. So he says to the person, that really hurt. You really hurt me by doing that. Whereas abusive anger, you don't let the person know that you've been hurt. You just come down on the person like a ton of bricks. What are you doing? And you scare the person, intimidate the person, you say. So then the person feels, I have to do this or else I don't know what's going to happen, So that's abusive anger. But if it's healthy anger, then the person says, I was expecting so much more of you, I asked you to do this, you were supposed to do it, and now I feel so let down, I feel so discouraged because you've let me down. And then the person should respond, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you like that. Let me try to rectify the situation, which is all the anger is there for, is to try and instill within the other person a desire to want to rectify and make things good again. If the person goes away frightened and scared and decides to leave and never come back, then nobody's goal was achieved, you see. So whether it's abusive or whether it's healthy anger, that's the tricky part.
Is it like you saying someone hit the child and you've seen just that side of it, and they've had the response, but if they knew what was going on beforehand, then they'd have a different perspective. So when whatever the situation, whether it's occasional or repetitive, at some point, would the need be to inquire, well, what's behind like someone's angry, then what's behind that? Or someone did something, why did you do that? Then respond.
If you're in a situation where the person's angry and you want to take the sting out of his anger and you want to go forward in the situation, then the best thing to do is really pay attention and then try and understand what the person's feelings are.
Yeah.
Why he is like that, really try and express that. Attempt to say, are you feeling really let down now? And immediately the other person's anger, he won't feel so frustrated, feel like, wow, the person's trying to understand me, he's trying to cooperate with me. Oh wow, we're on the same side, So it takes an effort, because it may be that the person is becoming angry because of something that you've done, you see, so that it's not his fault. You have to take responsibility for that reaction being there, you see. And you'd have to think, okay, well, how can I avoid bringing that type of situation around again, And if you express that to the person, then that will help. Because it's not a pleasant thing to be angry. Nobody wants to get up that morning and think, at 5:30, I'm going to get really angry. I can't wait for it, It's not. Nobody finds it pleasant, even the person that's. We used to have one person that was here for a while, and he used to get quite angry. And I remember when it first happened to me, he got really angry with me in Saudi Street. I was watching him, and energy was put out, and I was thinking, well, it's really nice of him. It's very nice of him to go to this extent, because he could have just gone, red bag of Abita, and it was like 20 minutes of really, really, like, very, very angry. I was thinking, well, at least he took the time and energy out to do that for me, Although I didn't fancy going through that again, so I tried to avoid in the future. Anyway, for ourselves, we're the pivot of our own existence, what's going on in our world, and we're the only ones that can change. But if we want others to change, then the real urgency is for us to change. Everyone else will change them.
Yeah. but also about being self-righteous, just to defend ourselves, is that we can't just, if we're acting like an idiot and someone gets upset with us because it's causing some problem somewhere else, and then we just think, oh, we just get angry, it's your problem, and we continue acting like an idiot, and that's the type of violence, isn't it?
Yeah. Prabhupada said, you'll show your love for me by how you cooperate. So, how to cooperate? Sadhu Sangha. Sangha comes from the word anga, which means a limb, is to become part of a body. And can you imagine having a body and one of the limbs? I mean, when the limb goes in front of a car, you still feel it when it gets hit, but the limb won't do what you want. Can you imagine how? I remember a woman advised me once about children, and she says, if you want to have children, just remember that they're like part of your body, but they won't do anything that you want. She said, so every time something happens to that child, she says it'll be like a knife going through your heart, and at the same time you'll have no control over it. And I was like, oh wow, okay, that's a really heavy. So when a person takes responsibility, it's like that also. He has all these entities around him. He's trying to organize them to engage in devotional service. And when they do something wrong, and when they let the side down, then it falls on his head, you see, so he feels the pain. So at least if they can do what this, act in a way which is cooperative for the situation. You know, you can't have 5 people captaining the ship, or the ship breaks into 5 directions, you know. So once somebody's been elected, then everyone row in time, you know, whoever it is. And okay, maybe he's not doing it the way that you want, but then you probably wouldn't be doing it the way that he wants. And nobody would actually be doing it the way anybody else wants anyway, because in Kali Yuga, nobody can agree with anyone, even themselves. So you just say, okay, he's up there, he's saying row like that, and he's steering it that way. Okay, you can see some rocks, I can't see them. Okay, fair enough. You know, then everyone can get along okay. Otherwise, we end up the ship will sink, and nobody will get anywhere. Quick one.
Adhoksaja Dharmadas, he also says often that people now are quite sensitive, like a lot of the time overly sensitive.
Yeah.
Right, so while there are all these subtle ways of hurting others, there also we are a lot of the time we overreact, isn't it?
Yeah. It's called the core head in the forgiveness course. It's addressed the core head. So the boss comes in and he shouts, and everyone's okay about it because they think, oh, the boss is just having a tough day, you know. But this one person's really upset, and he's upset because it's a core head that when he was a child, he wasn't showing affection, and now that person's not showing him affection, and he needs more than the normal amount of affection to be shown to him to feel okay, to be reassured. So he has a core head, so he's overly sensitive. So a good way to know whether you've got a core head is if nobody else was upset about it, and you were, then you can understand, okay, I must have something that I need to deal with myself, because everybody else was okay about it.
An interesting story from Bangladesh. So there's two friends, and they were just talking, chatting away. And said, oh, what would you do if you found a treasure? He said, I would do this, and I would buy this, and I would get that, and do this. And he says, yeah, but I wouldn't agree with that. He said, if I got it, I would do this. So then he said, well, if you did that, I would do this. And before you knew it, they were arguing and they started fighting. And it just all based on what if. And it seems like there's some talk going about now that the political correctness has gone crazy to some extent, where if you would have said this, then I would have taken you to court.
Yeah.
And it becomes like a whole imagined thing, if this had happened and it didn't.
Yeah.
So it's, I think it's just people they choose to become oversensitive.
Yeah.
Some people are sensitive because of experiences or something like that. But some people also, they tend to adopt an attitude that they're looking to be offended.
Yeah. Because the nice byproduct of all this, and I'll finish with this was the highlight of my Sankirtan career actually. because we used to get chased around so much by the authorities when we first used to go on the street. And as the years have gone by, so this man was giving me a lot of aggravation. And I rang up 101. I said, officer, we've got a problem here. 5 minutes, it wasn't even 5 minutes, it was like 3.5 minutes. They picked this guy up and they said to him, and they said, whether he's a Buddhist or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Christian, he's got a right to be here the same as everybody else. And then they're taking the guy away and the guy looks at him and he goes, Hare Krishna. And they dragged him off there. I was like, yeah, okay. So that's one good thing anyway, is that people are starting to realize that everyone has rights and that they need to be recognized. Animals have rights, cows have rights, Hare Krishnas have rights. We all, so that's great, okay. Let's get loads of books down and take advantage of the situation. That's what we're doing, we're just trying to find whatever's favorable and to just try and give out that knowledge, give people an opportunity. Give them some prashadam, give them some spiritual knowledge, give them spiritual sound vibration, one way or another, Jai. Iskam Guru in the key.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bo.
Adhoksaja Krishna Prabhu ki.
All of you ki. Jai.